Good morning or early afternoon, boxing fans around the world. I'm doing this update and it's out of cycle because of the timing of the fight that I'm going to be discussing, which was a fight that I did a preview for before. And I'm going to do the follow on with the results for those that care. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that these little guys, people don't seem to care about the little guys nearly as much as I think they should. But this was around Pradabsary versus Moonsri or Menayothin. And of course, Pradabsary is Petchmanee CP Freshmart. This was taking place out in Thailand. And unlike other fights, it was taking place today. That fight just wrapped up very recently. For those that care, the fight went the way I expected it to go, which was Pradabsary. This was a rematch for the WBC at the minimum weight. And Menayothin, of course, as I talked about in the previous, Menayothin's claim to fame was at one point surpassing Floyd Mayweather's record of 50-0, going on to do 54-0 before he would retire briefly. Somebody told him to come back, I don't know who, but then he would come back and take this fight against Petchmanee CP Freshmart, and he would lose that fight. That happened in 2020, I believe it was. This was the rematch. So that just happened out in Thailand, and one thing I learned that I didn't know is apparently the United States is one of very few countries where they've gotten rid of open scoring. And I find that sketchy because here in Thailand, of course, it's open scoring. I don't think it was aired. If it was, I'm not sure where you would find it. I know that before there was a cross airing somewhere and you could pick it up for the first fight, possibly through by way of Golden Boy. But here I didn't see a record that it was aired on any known thing. But Pradabsary pulls it out, gets a decision. I would argue it was not close, although it was a very interesting fight to see. And don't worry about how I saw it. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But it was a very exciting fight to see. I don't know that it would move the needle as far as like greatest fights ever. Clearly, Moonsri was on the decline. Clearly, Moonsri should have retired fully when he did and stayed retired because we saw now back-to-back losses against Freshmart. And so as a fight, like I said, it was decently exciting. You had two guys in there actively trying, but Moonsri certainly was not what he was when he fought Leroy Estrada or when he got to 50 or 51. And it just shows that there's always somebody who's better than the person that came before. And at this night, it was Petchmanee CP Freshmart. So kudos to him for pulling it out on this one. And we have to see, I think Moonsri should retire at this point. I think he's done enough. I think he's on the tail end and he doesn't have the motivation. I believe that he'd been hyped too hard, mostly by Golden Boy, but also people around him, people on forums that were kind of cheering for him to beat Floyd. There was a lot of hate on Floyd, and I think that got to him. I believe that. He's not on social media, but I think people around him were kind of bigging him up, especially once he got to 50-0. And I think once it got to a point that he took that loss against Freshmart the first time, it demoralized him. And I don't think he's the same fighter, nor do I think he ever will be the same fighter again. Time will tell, but I'm not sure where he goes from here. I hope that he's able to rebuild, but I would rather see him retire, spend time with his family. He probably didn't make a lot of money, but he's in Thailand, so the money he would have made is probably life-changing for him. And he's had a long career. And he's a solid fighter. I'm not trashing him as a fighter. I'm saying that this, after two losses back-to-back to the same guy, it's probably time to hang it up because we know that you're not the same fighter you used to be before you met this guy in the ring, and it happens. So, Shaipan Moonsri, a.k.a. Wanheng Menayothin, takes a decision loss out in Thailand to Petchmanee CP Freshmart, a.k.a. Pradabsary, and it was what it was. I've always said that the little guys are going to be the fights that you'd want to see. This was not one of them, but it was an exciting fight for what it was. Just, it's not going to move the needle in terms of the fight game. I wanted to make sure I covered it because I did mention it, and I wanted to see what was going to happen to Moonsri after what had happened to him before and whether he could pull it back out.